for summer?
Yeah.
If it comes. So, I don't know if some of you know Mitch Korman or not. We have a privilege of having Mitch Korman from the inception of the Iranian Canadian Real Estate Association be on our advisory board. I know Mitch for now about 8 years personally. He's been around for 26 years. He looks young. I don't know when he got his bar exam done. He looks very young. Mitch, I mentioned that part. Mitch office has a couple of offices. He has an office in Richmond Hill, North York, and one in downtown. His main office is in downtown. He practiced mostly real estate law, plus some commercial, some state, if I'm missing anything else. He has about 6 lawyers, plus himself, that handle his office. Last year, his office handled about 1,600 transactions, one of the largest real estate firms in Toronto. He actively also does different seminars. Today's seminar, what we call it, is 10 minutes with the Realtor. So what he's going to go through, he's going to go through the legal aspect and some issues on a daily basis Realtor are facing out there. And some of you are under the impression what you are doing is right, but apparently is not. So without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Steve. The first time I came here, I was looking on the Pico website actually. I was looking at, there were actually pictures of me, and somebody was videotaping. I think it was 2011 or 2010. It was like one of the first meetings, and it's great because I go to the Nehru's Gala, and every year it's sold out. And this year I think it was sold out in minutes, not even in hours. It's incredible how Pico has blossomed. And very, very happy to be a part of it from day one. And thanks to Steve and the rest of the board that allowed me to come out and share my ideas and let me be a part of Pico. I want to talk about, so what you've got in your hands, I hope, is in my notes from the seminar. This is one that I've been doing for years and years and years, but it always changes. It's called 10-Minute Realtor, and basically it's designed to be 12 topics, 10 minutes each, so it's a 2-hour seminar. And I change the topics from time to time because relative to what is important out there, what's important to you, what's important to us as lawyers closing these deals, and how we see the marketplace. So we're going to go through this one by one, except I'm going to probably cut out number 7 and 8 because there's a lot of other things that have been coming up that I want to have time to discuss. And 7 and 8 are not, not as important topics as the rest of them. So let's start with number 1, the news. Is the sky falling, bubble bursting, lending tightening? Like every day you're bombarded, you and your clients are bombarded with all kinds of news in the real estate market. This morning I woke up and I put on breakfast television, and there is Paul Hetherington. Everybody know who he is? Anybody not know who he is? That would be really bad. The president of the Toronto Real Estate Board. And he comes on and he's being interviewed, and they're asking him, why is home ownership so important? And I'm sitting there with my wife. My wife is not in the real estate business, and my wife is a stay-at-home mom taking care of our kids. So she's basically the layperson on the street. Makes 2 very important comments. 1, it's forced savings. 2, people who own their houses are healthier than people that don't own their houses. That's it. That's all he really had to say. That was just, I was embarrassed for your industry seeing him up there. Like, I've never met the man, I'm sure he's a nice guy and everything like that, but that's not the message you want to get out. It's forced savings, so you should buy a house. Like, that's one of a myriad of reasons to buy a house. But I don't think that would be on the top of my list. I certainly, just because there was one study somewhere that says that people might be healthier if they own their home rather than renting, like, that's certainly not a key answer. I mean, there's dozens of better answers than that. And it was unfortunate. So, my point is that this is what I'm seeing on television. This is what a lot of people are seeing on television. Your job is to cut through, if you don't mind my saying, cut through the crap of what's out there and focus on the real important things in the media. And because your clients are seeing the media, they're reading it, they're seeing it on television. Take McLean's and Toronto Life, for example. This time of year, we're in the spring market. This time of year, typically the headlines are that the housing market is red hot and everything is amazing. In December and January, it's always the headlines is the bubble bursting? Why are the magazines timing it that way, because in December and January, there's very little business out there. So, and they want headlines, so they sensationalize that the red hot market has completely cooled off and the bubble's about to burst. And this time of year, they know that there's 25 people lined up to buy every single family house that comes on the market. So the headlines, they're going with the trends. What they know exactly that our market is busy in the springtime and quiet in the winter. And that's what they use headlines to sensationalize that. And you have to, your clients are getting these magazines, you have to guide your clients through the negative press. And some of the press is very positive, but you also have to tame that down also. I mean, when the headlines are that the Toronto real estate market is going to increase 7% or 8% year over year, you have to manage your own clients' expectations. Don't tell them, yeah, look at it, buy something now because this is what's going to happen in the future. You should always be the same way you're telling them that the bubble's not going to burst, you want to be telling them that they're not going to become millionaires overnight just by buying real estate. You have to moderate, take the information that's out there and moderate it for them. One of the best tools I've found in doing that, because I get asked questions about the real estate market all the time, even though I'm not buying and selling, I'm not in your shoes, I use the reports of economists. I'd rather rely on a report that comes out of TD Bank's chief economist or Scotiabank's chief economist or an economist from CMHC than rely on a headline in Maclean's magazine. So, I look at what the real educated people are saying, because keep in mind, in this market, whether it's a good market or a bad market, the people that have the most to lose are the banks. Because the banks are the ones that are putting all their, well, not all their eggs, but they're investing heavily in the real estate market. Even though they're not buying real estate, they're certainly investing in the mortgage industry. And they're the ones that have to pay for the brightest, sharpest minds to guide the bank themselves through the markets that we're in. And that's why I tend to read, when Rami Ibrahim's my guy at TD Bank, he sends me a market outlook done by their economists. I actually read it because it's, sometimes it's very boring, but quite often I'll find some little bit of information in there, an interpretation of statistics or something like that will actually help me out. Same thing with CMHC, and I found also urbanization. Urbanation, is that what it's called? Urbanation is a group of economists and other professionals in the real estate industry that a lot of them spun off of CMHC. And they actually, it's like a think tank, and their business is analyzing the same statistics as everybody else, but coming out with what their view on the marketplace is. And actually going a step further. For example, CMHC, I don't think, analyzes the statistics of foreign investors in the new condo market, whereas urbanization, whatever they call it, urbanation, actually does that, and they go beyond that. They examine a lot of other factors that the other economists are not doing. So it's very helpful that there are companies like this. Unfortunately, you got to buy their research, but I'm sure that some of the mortgage professionals you deal with would have access to that type of research, and it will help you in your day-to-day practice. Last thing on news I want to talk about is the dollar, because the last time I was here, our dollar had already started to sink a little bit, but it wasn't too far off of par that it was going down. And we were talking about how amazing Canada is in terms of not going into the recession that the U.S. went through, having a really stable economy, great banking system. Our dollar was doing tremendously well, and what I was finding in my practice is that a ton of my clients are now offshore clients that are investing in Canada. And that lasted for about 3 years based on our economy being great relative to the rest of the world. Now things have changed a lot. Now the U.S. is humming along, and the U.S. economy has completely turned around. And our dollar has gone down by 25% from where it was 2 years ago. So there's the camp that says, oh my God, everything is devalued 25%. The investors that got in 3-4 years ago, and when a dollar was at par, they still did fine because our market has continued to rise. And keep in mind, at the time that they're making their investment, they were trying to find a safe haven for their money. So the combination of a safe haven with the dollar going down, and on the other side, our market going up, they're probably at least breaking even or doing a little bit better than that. But flash forward to now. Now you've had all those years of the world economy saying Canada is so great, which continues to exist out there. I mean, even though our dollar's gone down and the price of oil has gone down, people view Canada, and economists around the world, if you Google, Canada in the Wall Street Journal, you'll still see nothing but positive comments. Other than there was a short period of time where the hedge funds were saying short Canada because of its exposure to oil. Well, guess what? Our exposure to oil is only a tiny fraction of our economy, and it will slow things down in the West, but the rest of the country is not going to slow down. And what does that mean? So it means that our dollar at 25% less means that Canada's on sale. There's a great buying opportunity for people out there, and I think that the educated person around the world is going to recognize that more so than the fact that, oh no, our dollar's down, and oh no, we're so dependent on oil. So I actually have not seen any slowdown in foreign investment, which is also a really good thing. I mean, the clients that I've got that have been sending me deals from wherever, they're still sending the deals, and people are still buying. So that's also good news for our industry. So I'm going to get off of the news. Anybody want a question on the news topic? Okay, let's move into lending guidelines. So lending guidelines, I find, goes hand in hand with the news because it's constantly changing. So CMHC just came out with a change. I don't remember when it's starting in June. Anybody know the CMHC change? No, I think they. I can't remember whether they want more money to be put down. Oh no, the insurance is more expensive. That's it. Okay. Like it's a few dollars more to buy CMHC insurance. But the people that are seeing, but it did become a headline. It's a headline in the news that CMHC is going up. The average person on the street doesn't know whether it's good for them, bad for them. All they see is a headline. And so what I'd like to think is, like, all news is usually good news in our industry. So what happens is CMHC wants to cool down the market, so they say we're raising our prices. So what happens? A headline of raising the prices doesn't matter whether it's good or bad. It matters just that it puts real estate in the headline of the news again. That stimulates people buying and selling. Much more so than them raising a little rate on what they're going to charge for CMHC. And keep in mind that CMHC is a very small percentage of the whole marketplace. But a headline goes out to everybody. And these headlines create stimulus in our marketplace, whether it's for good or bad. Raising rates, lowering rates. Every single headline does, in my opinion, does the opposite of what the banks really want to do. So if they raise rates to cool off the economy, they're going to just have more people jump in because people are going to say, oh no, I better buy now because rates are going up. And that's just going to stimulate things more. So I find that if you really want to cool things down, keep quiet. Don't be making headlines. The banks, the appetite of the banks for different types of deals is constantly changing. So in your marketplace, I've had many clients that are great clients. I like to, in your marketplace, I use builder clients. I have tons of Persian builder clients. And they might have bought a house 10 years ago and got a mortgage with TD, and then they bought two more deals 8 years ago with CIBC, and then one with Scotia, and now they're calling me and they're saying, I can't get a mortgage. It's like, why can't you get a mortgage? It's like you've done so many houses, you've got mortgages on all of them. Now the rules have changed. Now they don't care that I'm putting down 35%. Now they want to see where my income's coming from. Now they want to see, a myriad of different things. They want to see money in the bank. They want to, all kinds of rules have changed. Not that they didn't change the rules. They didn't post that, guess what, TD's changing the rules tonight. Tomorrow you're going to have A, B, and C. They do it quietly. So you put in your same mortgage application, you buy your house, you've done 10 deals with, I'm not trying to knock TD, because TD is a very good bank and it's one of my banks, but you've done 10 deals with TD, no problems. I remember I was building houses, I built about 20 houses in a span of 15 years. There was one house that I built, and it was in my sister's name. Anybody here from CRA? Okay, good. Oh, like, you better stop the camera right now. Anyway, it was in, the house was in someone's name who didn't have an income, and I still had an $850,000 mortgage from TD for my sister who had no income. And it was like, these were happy times. This was 10 years ago, or longer. How many years is it before you can still audit me or hurt? Okay, good, we're fine. Anyway, but my point is that the rules are constantly changing, and you've got to be talking to your mortgage guys and talking to your bankers and talking to your clients, because lo and behold, the return on their investment is going to dramatically change if they can't get a mortgage, and then they have to come to a guy like me and say, Mitch, can you find me private funding? And now they're paying 8% on a first mortgage, where the rest of the world's paying 2.79% on that same first mortgage. Or we're at Home Trust, where it's 4.99 or 5.99, and it's a very different climate that we're in, and you need to evaluate which banks have appetites for which type of deals at certain times. I have a client that is doing all his deals with Ukrainian credit union. Why? Because they haven't changed the rules. He pays a higher rate, but they've been loaning him the money on what I would consider, more odd deals. Deals where, there are renovations and income properties, just more difficult deals than the run-of-the-mill. There's tons of small banks and credit unions that you could shop around to, or you could have your mortgage broker shop around to. But I'm finding that the most important thing is, for your mainstream business, you need to know how your bank is changing, or what appetite the big banks have for which types of deals, and that information you can get from your bankers, your mortgage brokers, because you need to be armed with it before you go out with your client and sit in a lineup of 24 cars and bid on that bungalow that everybody wants to tear down, and go in firm, and then find out that you can't get a mortgage. That's the situation you want to avoid. Questions on lending guidelines changing? No?
Mitch,
Yep.
how is your practice now regarding the people overseas, so in terms of signature?
The question is, how is the practice changing with people who are overseas? We're going to get into that a little bit when we have powers of attorney, things of that nature. The practice is actually getting better, because I'm finding that in almost every marketplace, every country, there's more access to lawyers. So, in Tehran, for example, I'm sure there's tons of Canadian registered lawyers. There's consular services with different embassies. There's places where we can get documents signed, and we're also using Skype and FaceTime now to sign documents. So, but don't say, oh, you mentioned you can use FaceTime in a seminar, so my client's in Kazakhstan and that's how we're going to do it. No, it doesn't work exactly like that. With FaceTime and Skype, with us, we're acting for both the lender and the borrower in all these transactions. So if the bank sends us mortgage instructions, let's say it's Bank of Montreal, it's just ordinary mortgage instructions. Part of the mortgage instructions say that we have to verify who our client is, we have to meet with them personally, things of that nature. So what we do is we'll go back to the bank, we'll go back to Bank of Montreal and say, listen, this client is in wherever, and we're going to sign them up remotely using Skype or using FaceTime, and we would like your consent to that. Most of the banks, and we have to do that because we have an obligation, because we're acting for the bank, we have to tell them if we're not meeting the client face-to-face. Most banks will say that's fine, but not always. A lot depends on the circumstances. They might ask me, do you know your client? Have you done other deals for this client? And if I say no, where did this client come from? Oh, it was a referral from a realtor at Century 21. And they say, well, how well do you know the realtor? They might ask me more and more questions, and ultimately they might say, we're not comfortable with you signing them up remotely. Then I've got to go out and find a lawyer in that jurisdiction to sign them up. And it is problematic. So if you are in a situation where you know that your client is going to be out of town, there's many opportunities to sign clients up when they are in town. Most clients are actually buying things when they're here, and then they go away, I find. So get them to come into our office as soon as even if they're contemplating buying. I have many agents that will actually bring their clients into my office, say, Mitch, I want you to meet this client. They're thinking about buying something. Take a copy of their ID and shake their hand. And those are the smart agents. Those agents know that by doing that, I can verify that I actually met the client face-to-face, and when the bank asks me, have you met this client before, I can say yes. And I've got a scanned version of their ID in my computer system. You know, I can answer all the right answers to the bank, so we don't have problems. The problems come when agents don't do that. If you just, you know, sell something to your client and then have your client says, I'm going back to Iran, not a problem. You know, this deal, one deal might close. You might have closed a deal 6 months ago with that bank and that client, with a different client and that particular bank, but 6 months later, that same bank may be saying, no, we're not allowing that to happen. So, you know, in best practices, prepare for the worst. Bring your client into, whether it's us or any other lawyer out there, bring your client in, make an appointment. If you're sending lots of business to a particular lawyer, that lawyer is going to be happy to see you whether it's a deal or no deal. You know, just, I will always make time. As a matter of fact, in my office, my front staff know that if an agent walks in with any client, just unannounced, no appointment, treat them great, offer them a coffee, get their ID, find out what the problem is, and we always have a lawyer come and at least say hello. You know, we don't always have time to sit down and have a whole meeting, but that's what we offer to agents specifically to help with that type of situation. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
How much savings is going up?
How much?
The savings insurance is going up.
I don't know. I think it's
Worst scenario 3.75. Worst case scenario 5%. 3.75%.
June the 1st?
The average is 2%.
It's only going up for the people who are putting less than 10%.
Less than 10%.
Between 5 and 10, and it goes to roughly about 4 point and change for the insurance premium.
But what percentage of the whole marketplace is
The
worst
market,
that's down?
yes, that's good. The market now,
It's gotta be
statistic shows almost 70% of the mortgages are average about 12% down payment, so it really doesn't affect that small portion.
Okay. Title and taxes, we're on number 3. Different ways of taking title. You remember from real estate school, you can take it as joint tenants, tenants in common. I'm getting a lot more questions these days on how to take title, especially with the bank of mom and dad, because that seems to be one of the areas, because as home prices continually are getting more and more a little bit out of reach for first-time buyers, CMHC might be getting more expensive. People are actually turning to the bank of mom and dad and getting mom and dad to help support kids' purchases of their first home. Mom and dad are calling me up saying, what do I do? I trust my kid, and they're very, I think they're going to be great at being homeowners, but I want some protection. Some moms and dads are also forced to go on title by the banks. So kids don't have the income to support the mortgage that they're doing. Parents have to go on to the mortgage. There's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. If parents are going on to the mortgage of the kids, the parents should be going on title for 1%, and the kids should be going on title for 99%. The reason being, if you put parents on title jointly with the kids, and the kid sells the property 10 years down the road, the parents are going to have to pay capital gains tax on half of that property. That's not a good situation, and I wouldn't want to be the lawyer or the agent 10 years from now when the parents are screaming at me because they're paying all this tax, which could have completely been avoided. So if the parents go on title for 1% and the kids on title for 99%, 99% of the gain is tax-free. And guess what? It's a plausible argument when the time comes to sell. And if you make that argument to CRA and they see it's 99%, 1%, chances are you're going to get 100% of that gain tax-free, and CRA is not going to tax the capital gain on that 1%. I should make a disclaimer, I'm not a tax lawyer. I'm just telling you what I've seen from my experience. So that's the right way to do it. I've also been seeing a lot of different things with employment status, where one person is got a great job, another person doesn't have a job. Banks are getting finicky in that situation. Also with credit scores, banks are actually saying, no, we don't want this person on title because you've got, let's say, husband and wife, brother and sister, whatever, 2 people going on title. One of them has a great credit score, one of them has a not so great credit score. And you'd think that if both are going on title, the bank can go after both of them if the mortgage goes into default. Wouldn't a bank rather have two people that they could sue rather than just one person they could sue? You'd think that would make perfect sense. But here the banks are saying, no, we don't want the person with bad credit on title at all. Keep them out of this. Why do you think that would be? Anybody?
You can't take the blood out of the stone.
Good answer. Anybody else? Okay, it's because banks don't sit with the mortgages on their books. Banks resell their mortgages. So when banks, the way banks continually make money is they take a bundle of mortgages, they package them up, and they sell them to other banks, or they sell them to bonds, or they sell them, like they sell the security to somebody else. So if you're selling a bundle of mortgages where everybody in it has an A credit rating, 700 or above or whatever, the other banks that are buying that bundle of mortgages from you will pay a lot more money. As soon as you throw in some bad credits, even though it's in conjunction with another person that's got good credit, as soon as you throw in bad things into the mix, then the banks won't pay as much money. So that's why, otherwise you'd think, it'd be crazy why a bank wouldn't want two people on the hook rather than one person on the hook. That's why. They're going to resell those mortgages and they'll get a higher price if they keep it all perfectly AAA credits in that bank. Yeah. Good question. After closing, can you add another person on the title? Yes and no. Yes, you can do it, and no, it's an event of default under the mortgage provisions if you change title. So if you have a house with a mortgage and you transfer it from person A to person A and person B, any kind of transfer you do with that house, as long as there's a mortgage on it, it's an event of default under 9 out of 10 banks' standard charge terms that are out there. Now, does the bank have mortgage police that are going through the land registry office looking to see if title changes have happened? No, they don't. So it's a technical event of default. It could be, like the bank, it could be an event of default, but even if the bank found out about it, if you just add another person on title, chances are the bank is still going to say, well, we want this other person to give us information on themselves, and we're not calling the loan. But it's a risk that your client takes, because if it's an event of default, the bank can say, pay us back. And when they say pay us back, they don't mean just pay us back the money we loaned you, they mean pay us back with penalties and interest as well. It'll invoke the prepayment penalty if that happens. So you have to be cautious of doing that. And I generally tell people the best thing to do is, as long as the person doesn't have a terrible credit rating or something out of the ordinary is wrong with that person you want to add, just go to the bank and say, look, this is what we want to do. We just got married, we want to add a person to the title, we're getting a divorce, we want to take a person off title, whatever it happens to be, talk to your banker and get approval to do what you want to do. That's the safest action. Yeah?
How about the opposite of the scenario? Let's say two people are on the title, and then after one of the...
Okay. Question is the opposite situation where you got two people on title and now you want to take somebody off, let's say because it's a divorce. We get that all the time also. Now you've got to have, the one person that's going to stay on is going to have to qualify for that whole mortgage. If they don't, the bank's not going to allow it. The bank's not going to care that you're getting divorced. They care that you're getting divorced, but they're not going to care as far as their security goes. They're going to say, no, you're both going to have to stay on title. And that's, again, I find that people bring in other people to go on title with them. So if it's a divorce situation, the person wants to keep, the wife wants to keep the house for argument's sake, and she, on her own, her credit and her income can't support it, the wife might have to bring in a parent or bring in a friend or something to go on title for that 1% again. And it just makes the deal a little bit more complicated, but it can still happen.
Mitch,
Yeah.
in both cases, what is your obligation in the sense that you have to disclose to the lender?
We have to disclose to the lender. Good question. The question is, what do we have to disclose as lawyers to the lender? In your scenario where you want to add somebody on title, we have, let's say we close the deal. We're out of the deal at the moment that we close it. So we're acting for the buyers, we're acting for the lender, and now 3 years later, the buyers want to change title. We don't have to go back to the bank and say, oh, guess what? these people are changing title. Our obligation to the bank ends at the time that we actually close the deal. This scenario, it's a little bit different. We can't, maybe I should say we won't. We're not going to transfer title, taking somebody off without the bank's consent, because we'll tell you that that is for sure an event of default. Like the bank, even if we take somebody off title, the bank still has a personal covenant, so they can still go after a person. But that's a likelihood, that's an event that would get our clients in trouble. So we would be saying, we don't want to do it, and we're not going to do it. In the first scenario, adding a person on, we probably would still do it, but we don't have an obligation. We're not the bank's police. We are the bank's police when we're acting for the bank and the borrower at the same time in registering a mortgage. That's when we have to disclose everything. Years later, we don't, but again, we won't do something that particularly is going to get our clients in trouble. Even if our clients, have asked us to do it, we'll probably just say, find somebody else to do it for you. Taxes. We're done with matrimonial home, cottage income property. The only other thing I want to say on title and taxes is when you're dealing with secondary properties, like a cottage or income property, everything, there's no right answer for everybody's situation. So the best thing that you can do is talk to your mortgage people, talk to your lawyers, talk to the accountants of your clients, get a consensus from, lay out the different options, and then find the option that's right for your client. Because no two clients are exactly the same. Certain similar situations will come up again and again from time to time. But if you're doing your job well, you got to gather information and come up with the best solution for that particular client. Number 4, family law. We talked a little bit about transferring because of a divorce. I've had a lot of instances recently with designation of matrimonial homes. So what that is quite often one person's on title to a house, husband or wife, doesn't matter. And that was done, in your circumstances, maybe that was done because the husband came first and got landed and the wife stayed behind back in the home country, and then, or maybe they were boyfriend and girlfriend at that point, and then when she eventually came and they got married, and then she got her landing years after the house was already bought. So the house has always been in the husband's name, and now they're splitting up. They're separating, getting a divorce, and the wife is concerned about protecting the fact that she's got an interest in this matrimonial home. Even though she's not on title, as soon as you get married, you have an interest in that matrimonial home. So I'm finding a lot of family lawyers are calling us saying, we're in a family law situation where the husband is the only one on title, and we register a notice on title that this is designated as a matrimonial home. And we can do that registration in 5 minutes. We just hit a few buttons, pay a fee, and now there's a registration on that property saying that this is a matrimonial home. What does that do? It prohibits the husband from selling or mortgaging that house out from underneath the spouse. So it's just another layer of protection. I mean, when you have a matrimonial home, let's say the husband in this case, you have to get consent of the spouse to put a mortgage on it or the seller to do anything. But if the land registry shows that just one person's on title, the husband can say, this isn't my matrimonial home, and just sign a mortgage commitment, and next thing you know, FCT has gone off and registered a mortgage and given the husband the money. So that's what people are trying to avoid. So as soon as you register that designation of matrimonial home, you can't do that anymore. The husband can't lie. It's there for everyone to see. The flip side is the wife could be lying, and the wife could be saying, this is a matrimonial home when she's never even lived there. That happens too, but she's signing a declaration saying it's a matrimonial home, so if she does that, she can get into a lot of trouble for falsifying a sworn document. In your business, so I'm just giving you some broad strokes of what we're seeing out there, but in your business, if I was in your shoes and I'm in a divorce situation, I would be looking from the perspective of, this is great, even though divorce is not fun for anybody else, it could be great for you, because there's 3 deals to be done. There's the sale of the matrimonial home, and there's 2 other purchases. And if you act for both husband and wife on the sale of the matrimonial home, which is what you should do, because keep in mind, your job is to sell a house. My job is close the sale of that house. it doesn't matter to me or you who's on title to that. You have to transact that piece of business, and so do we. So we're in fact in the same boat. We're both acting for everybody that has an interest in that house, whether it's a designation as a matrimonial home, or it's both husband and wife are on title. Doesn't really matter, because we have to act for both of them, and so do we. So it's a difficult, tricky thing to do, but you can do it. And if you do it, you basically have to be Switzerland. You have to stay the course, right down the middle. You have to disclose all information to both husband and wife. You might have to deal with husband and wife's respective family lawyers. That's not fun, but it could still be lucrative to you, because if you stay the course and you're open and transparent and you just focus on the job that you have to do, which is selling that house, those two family lawyers are going to be referring lots of business to you. They're great sources of referral, family lawyers. And the husband and wife are each going to use you when it comes time to buy their house. But the key is, from day one, you have to sit each of them down, and even if it's not in the same room together, because they may not want to be in the same room together, you have to set the groundwork. You have to say, I'm going to do this job for you. My job is to get the most number of dollars for you and for your ex. And end of story. So I'm going to act for both of you. I'm not going to keep secrets from anybody. I'm going to do the best job I can in selling this house. And I'm only taking instructions that are joint from you, so that one can't say, oh no, I don't want this done, and the other can't say, I want this done. It has to be a consensus of what you want done, and I'm not taking sides. I'm not taking instructions from one party or the other. And in your business, it can be done. And there's a lot of clients that we have, a lot of agents that are referring this business that are doing this and getting all three deals. So, I had one recently. An agent calls me up and says, I got a letter from the spouse's family lawyer saying, don't communicate with, there's only one person on title, don't communicate with the wife or the wife's lawyer. You're only acting for the one person that's on title, end of story. And this is basically a family lawyer bullying the agent. So the agent's calling me, what do I do? And I said, you should write back to that family lawyer saying, my understanding is that the wife does have, this is a matrimonial home, therefore she does have an interest in that home, and it would behoove me to not be acting for both parties, as they both have an interest in the home. Please correct me if I'm wrong. That would shut the lawyer up right away, because what can he say at that point? He can't say, no, this is not a matrimonial home. I mean, he knows the law. And it's just an instance where he's just trying to bully the agent, and we're not having it. And if need be, if that didn't work, then there'd be a letter coming from us to that lawyer saying, this is the situation. Or we would be talking to the lawyer on the other side saying, you know what, send us a letter. We've been asked to act on the sale. Send us a letter saying that this is a matrimonial home, so that I can forward it to the lawyer on the other side, and then we'll see how he reacts to that. So don't be bullied. I mean, the fair thing is that you do your best job you can in selling that house, getting the most number of dollars for everybody. What ultimately happens, if they can't decide on where those dollars will go, the money will just sit in a lawyer's trust account until the family lawyer is battling it out. Doesn't mean that the house can't be sold. The house should be sold, and dollars should be maximized right away. Whole different ballgame if one party wants to stay in the house and the other party doesn't want to stay in the house. That's another seminar. But 9 times out of 10, the husband and wife are both focused on generating as much dollars as they can so they can get on with their lives. And then you're doing a good service for them. Maximize the dollars and let them get on with their lives so that they can each buy another house and you get 2 more deals. Any questions on, yeah?
In a case like this, when there's one person on the title, and the other party who's not on the title, I mean, for any bizarre argument, stop the sale?
Yes.
If the offer is done?
Yep. Can the other person on title stop the sale? The person that's not on title stop the sale? And the answer is yes, because that person has an interest in, even though they're not registered on title, they have an interest in the property. That's why you have the spousal consent box on your REIA form. Every time you sell, you want to get spousal consent, whether they're on title. Well, if they're on title, you don't need spousal consent because they're signing anyway, if they're on your agreement. But if they're not on title, you want to get the spousal consent. And As an agent, you can get into trouble if you know it's a matrimonial home and you sign up the client, the husband, to sell it, and you don't take any steps to try and get consent. That's when you're not doing your job.
But what's the best way of finding out? If the person is not telling us?
Go to their walking club.
No, I mean, you don't have to be, yeah, that's actually a good way, but you don't have to be police. If they legitimately don't tell you, if you don't have no clue, person says, I want to sell my house, and, you don't, are you married? Is this a matrimonial home? They say, no, I'm divorced and my wife's long gone. There's nothing you can do. But if they tell you that, I want to sell my house, I'm the only one on title, so you're going to sell it for me, and, my wife moved out 3 months ago, so she's out of the picture, there's the alarm bell that goes off. Now you know that this is a matrimonial home, and you have to explain what the significance of that is to your seller. And you can't just say, don't worry, I'll sell it for you anyway, we won't, your secret's good with me. That's not the attitude to take, because you're going to get yourself into a lot of trouble. Yep.
If someone buys the house but not qualify for the mortgage, down payment and also monthly payments, he's paying, but the title is somebody else's immediate family name, daughter, son, or parents. Better have power of attorney or affidavit to show every year who is living there, make it tax also proposes to do it.
Okay, good question. Let's say a family comes from Iran, and it's a husband and wife and a couple kids, and they come on the strength of one of the kids is an engineer, and he got lots of points, so he had enough to be able to, everybody was able to immigrate. The husband, the father of the family, he could be a neurosurgeon from back in Tehran and be brilliant and have lots of money, but he can't practice medicine here, so doesn't have an income, so he can't buy a house on his own. But he's got all this money, so he gives the money to his son, because his son can qualify for a mortgage. But in reality, the son is just going on title for the parents. This happens all the time. What you should do is have a trust declaration. Have the son sign. It's not a matter of power of attorney. You would rather have the son sign something saying, I'm holding this property in trust for my dad. Rather than just say, a power of attorney just gives someone the ability to do things in someone else's name. But a trust declaration actually sets out the fact that you're holding something in trust for somebody else.
After closing can do that?
You can do it before closing, you can do it after closing. But the problem is, I get asked this by agents all the time, this is the scenario. Mitch, we're closing next week. Mitch, can you draft up a trust declaration for us saying that the property is held in trust for the dad? And the answer is, yeah, I could draft that up for you. I don't want to draft that up for you because now if you tell me to do it, I got to go to the bank and tell the bank this property is not really going to be owned by the son. The son's just going on title. It's really owned by the father. So now it's a property that's held in trust for the benefit of a third party. The bank might not like that. And if it's a week before closing, you might be undermining the deal. So for example, Bank of Nova Scotia might be fine with that because they might do these deals all the time. But if your mortgage is coming from Street Capital, Street Capital sends us a declaration they want the clients to sign saying that this property is not being held in trust for the benefit of any third party. They actually make us go the extra step and get that declaration on every single deal we do with them. So you have to be very, very cautious of how you do it. What I've done is, anybody who's ever asked me questions about holding things in trust, I've given agents trust declaration, like a blanket trust declaration. Fill in the blanks. Here you go, here's a trust declaration. You can share it with anybody you want. I'm not filling it out for anybody because I don't want to get involved with, I'm acting for the bank on a particular transaction. I don't want to specifically be drafting a trust declaration that I know the bank's not going to be happy about. So if I were to give you a precedent and your clients were to fill it out on their own, put their names in, whatever, I can't comment on the legality of it and whether they do it right, but that's one option. If they do it after closing, again, I don't have an obligation to go back to the bank and say, guess what, bank? they just sign this trust declaration.
So
Yeah.
in this case, the father is getting refinanced, but the title is not in father's name in one case. Another case is if son marries and gets trouble and get the divorce,
Yep.
then
Okay, so for your first case, if the father's getting the refinancing, then you'll probably have to transfer title into the father's name if the father can now qualify for the financing. So one way or the other, if the father's getting the financing, you'll probably have to put the father's name on title, so you don't have a problem in that sense. The second situation where the property's in the son's name and now the son's about to get married, that is ideally the situation where you better have a trust declaration that was signed. That's why you want to have a trust declaration signed early on. You want to have something that was, if not at the time of closing, a month later, 6 months later, but if you wait 3 years, and then all of a sudden now the son's getting married, and then you do a trust declaration right before, 2 weeks before the wedding, if they split up, then the new spouse is going to have a good argument saying, oh, this is a matrimonial home and I'm entitled to half of it. If the trust declaration was signed right around the time that the property was bought, the new spouse is not going to have that argument. So, timing is important.
It's been signed but not registered.
You don't, in Ontario, there is no registration system for trust declarations.
Okay.
So, just the fact that it exists, There's no, you don't register it in the land registry office, there's no other registration system. It's just, you're fine. And if that, if you have a trust declaration and circumstances change and all of a sudden that trust declaration disappears, sometimes that's actually very good for your clients also. So, question?
If you sign the trust, can you register a lien for the amount of the trust? Or percentage of the trust? If you don't trust your son?
Yeah, the question is, can you register a trust? You can't register specifically the trust, but you can register notice of an agreement. And a trust is an agreement. It's an agreement between two people saying, I'm going to hold this property in trust for you, and in return, you're going to indemnify me for any expenses related to that property. So you can register notice of an agreement. That's actually a better way to do it, because when you register notice of an agreement, you're just registering that there's an agreement on title. You're not putting any specifics in the registration of what the nature of the agreement is, because you don't really want the rest of the world to know that the property is held in trust. So that's a way that you can have your cake and eat it too. The other way is if the parents register a mortgage. I mean, you can register a mortgage on your kid's place, and if you're advancing the money to. Yep, question.
Is there any registration for power of attorney in Ontario?
Similar situation. There's no. There is and there isn't. There's no central registration for power of attorney, but when a power of attorney is used for real estate, then we do register it at the land registry office.
But let's say the client say, that I can't find my power of attorney. I forgot where the lawyer was office. I know.
Then you can't use it.
Okay.
We can't close transactions unless we actually see the original power of attorney. And we're going to get more into the power of attorney, so I'll leave it at that, and then my other comments will expand on that. How was your time? We had an hour?
Yeah.
You want to take a break?
I think we can go.
Keep going?
Okay.
If you don't mind.
No, I don't mind. We're going to do hot market conditions. So we're at number 5. I talked a little bit about hot market conditions when in my opening remarks about what's going on out there. I don't know where your offices are. My main office is down in Riverside and Leslieville, and in my neighborhood, anything comes on the market. If it's a house or semi, other than a condo, and there's like 30 offers, people lined up, on the street, cars parked, agents, clients, scribbling notes, changing things in offers, waiting for their turn to be invited into the house to present that offer. It's crazy, and I can only imagine what you guys are going through. It's just a little bit bizarre in many little pockets in the GTA. So, when you're sitting in that car, and you can see all the other cars, and you'll know who they are because there's how often do you see cars lined up on a street where there's 2 people or 3 people in every single car just sitting there? Only when there's a house for sale on that in this type of market. And you're sitting there with your client, and your client can see all these other cars, and your client says, I really want this house. And you're saying, well, the only way we're going to have a chance of getting this house is if we scratch out the condition on financing, and we scratch out the condition on inspection, and we go in with a firm offer, and it's going to be $80,000 above listing. And your client has already lost out on 10 other houses, and they're saying, okay, this is the one, I love this house, I'm sick of doing this, cross out those clauses, put it in at $90,000 over asking, I don't care, I want this house. And you do all that, and you go in, and lo and behold, you get the house. And you're so happy for your client's really happy for the moment, because that's the way people are when you're at an auction, and you won. And then the next day, I kind of think of it like, did you see the Casino-Rama commercial, where the person just scratches his nose or something, and the next thing you know, he's won this big, huge unicorn that lights up? That's what I think of in the real estate market. I think the next day the person wakes up and they go, oh my God, I have this unicorn that I just spent $90,000 over asking for. What am I going to do now? And they're freaking out. Freaking out because they have buyer's remorse, and freaking out because they're exposed. What if their mortgage approval doesn't come in, the appraisal doesn't come in at at the new value, which is $90,000 over asking, and they can't get a mortgage? They've gone infirm. What if there's termites? What if there's structural problems with this house? They didn't have any opportunity to do a home inspection. There's 1,001 things. I don't have to tell you how many things can go wrong with a deal in this scenario. The message I'm going to give you is there's a high likelihood that you're going to get sued and I'm going to get sued in this scenario.
Why
And the
you?
way, sorry?
Why you?
Why me? Because everybody loves to sue lawyers.
First realtor,
Yeah, first realtor, then the lawyer. But nonetheless, I'm telling you, like, people, when deals go wrong, people want to sue everybody, and they sue lawyers too. And they just do. And we have to defend ourselves just like you do. So what do? When you're sitting in that car, you want to take notes. When you have this discussion about going infirm and crossing out these clauses, don't just cross them out and have them initial it, because when you're in front of a judge, and the client is saying, I just signed and initialed wherever my agent told me to, the judge is going to believe that. The judge is always going to side with the person who's not the professional. You're the professional, so you already have one strike against you when you're sitting in front of that judge. So, and then the person's going to say there was so much fine print, I didn't really know what I was signing, or I didn't really understand it. And the judge is going to believe them with that also. And at the end of the day, the judge is more likely that the judge is going to side with the client than side with you. Even if you've got 25 years of exemplary service to the community as a realtor and you've never been sued before, one of these guys is going to get you because you didn't do your homework. And your homework is make notes, have your client initial things, send emails, have your client respond. So good tip. You're sitting in that car, just say, listen, I'm writing up an email, I'm sending it to you right now. Even though you're sitting right next to me, I'm just sending you an email saying, we discussed crossing out this condition, we discussed the risk of not doing the home inspection, you've instructed me that you want to go in firm regardless. I'm sending you this email, it's got 3 lines in it, please just acknowledge it, yes, or okay, or whatever, and send it right back to me. Now you've got a bulletproof, it took you 2 minutes, and you've got a bulletproof case. Because you've got evidence that you actually had the discussion, you've got an email that the client responded to. It doesn't have to be an email, it could be handwritten notes where the client initials it. So actually, I did a seminar last Monday for Sotheby's. I do a lot of seminars for RE/MAX and Sotheby's and Bosley. So at Sotheby's, I'm up there talking. It was on a different topic, but the topic came up about the hot market conditions. And no sooner did I say, this is what, do an email, handwritten note, get them to initial that, and because that shows that there was actually the communication. And then the broker got up and said, after I was done, and said, just so you know, in the materials that you have on our website or whatever, saying this to all the agents, we have a pre-printed form that is the client's acknowledgement of waiving all these things. And I'm like, weren't you listening to me? We don't want the pre-printed form. The pre-printed form is just like every other pre-printed form. That gives the client ammunition to say, I just signed whatever was pre-printed, I just initialed and signed whatever the agent said to me. You don't want to have a pre-printed form for this. This is too important. You want to have the discussion with your client, you want to have the email chain, you want to have a handwritten note, you want something that shows that these discussions are out of the ordinary from the rest of the deal. That's what's important. So if you want to have a defensive practice, have that discussion with the client, send that email, have them respond right back to you at that moment in time, handwrite some notes, have the client initial your handwritten notes. Way better than using a pre-printed form. Everybody is always looking for the easy way. Easy way is a pre-printed form. Don't look for a pre-printed form in this circumstance. Because everything's great while the market has been good and the market's been hot and prices are increasing. As soon as things slow down, as soon as things turn the other way, that's when clients are looking to get out of deals and looking to point their finger at their agent or their lawyer, and they're going to be suing us. So might as well get in the habit now of having a defensive practice and doing a good job for yourself and for your clients. Okay, let's talk about condos. I'm always amazed that, in a hot market, we still do have multiple offers on a lot of condos in downtown Toronto. Even some of the stuff up here, like in Hallmark and some of the Liberty developments that there's been multiple offers on. You only have one shot at a multiple offer. And it amazes me that so many agents still don't pre-order status certificates. So if you have a feeling that you're slightly underpricing the condo because you want to generate multiple offer situation, order the status certificate, give it to every agent that looks at the property. Because the worst thing you can do is create a multiple offer situation, get 5 offers on a condo, and have them all conditional on review of the status certificate, and then have the deal fall apart on the review of the status certificate. Because keep in mind, anybody can find, any good lawyer can find something wrong with the status certificate. It may not be major, but the way you're drafting your clauses in your agreements is that it's in their complete unfettered discretion. So if the reserve fund shows $1 million and you'd like to have $1.2 million in it, that's a reason you can get out of the deal. Don't lose out on that the one opportunity you have of multiple offers, or any situation in condos. As soon as you list a condo, order the status certificate. You're going to have to order it anyway at some point. Do it then, spend the $100. If it expires after 3 months, or, well, some title insurers say 1 month is max. Some will let you have a second month. Doesn't matter. You'll pay another $100. Order it, and you have to order it again. But you can't lose out on that opportunity to make the sale because you didn't have the status certificate. That's, in my mind, that's crazy. Last thing I want to talk about in hot market conditions is on houses with pre-listing inspections. Keep in mind that when a homeowner and their agent do an inspection, ahead of listing the property, and they have that, you walk in the house smells like vanilla and coffee, and there on the countertop is the home inspection done by Carson Dunlop, and so everybody can flip through it and see what a great house this is. Keep in mind that you should still be encouraging your client to do their own home inspection. And if it's a multiple situation and there's no time to do that, you have to tell your client you can't rely on that home inspection. The only way you can rely on that home inspection is if you get a letter of transmittal. So what you do is you look and see who the home inspector is, see Carson Dunlop, call Carson Dunlop up right away and say, hey, I'm an agent that's going to contemplate putting an offer in on this property. I would like to know, can I get a letter of transmittal so my client can rely on your home inspection if we win the bid? Carson Dunlop will say, absolutely, send us a check for $300 and you can rely on our home inspection. And you send them the check and the client can rely on the home inspection. If you don't take that step, and something goes wrong with the house, the client's going to be coming after you. They're going to say, you told me, the home inspection looked great, and, there were, the foundations, we've now found out the foundation's crumbling, and you didn't tell me that I can get a letter of reliance. I thought I could just go and sue the home inspector because they were obviously wrong in their inspection. You can't sue the home inspector because there's no privity of contract. The purchaser didn't have a relationship with that home inspector, so you can't sue based on that home inspection. Just pay the fee, get the letter of transmittal saying that you can rely on the home inspection. You have nothing to worry about. Questions on hot market conditions? No? New condo construction. A lot of things have evolved in new condo construction, because all of a sudden, I now, in the last couple weeks, is the first time I've actually had phone calls from people that have bought condos. I have one client that had, in the last 4 or 5 years, had 5 new condos that they purchased. The client lives in the US. And we've closed on, I think, 2 or 3 of them. Now the call from the client is, can you verify what the outside date is for termination of my agreement? Because keep in mind, with all these agreements, when you bring your client in, you fill out a bunch of Terrian forms, and there's a tentative occupancy date, there's a firm occupancy date, there's an outside date, and these dates all are defined under the terms of Terrian and the Ontario New Home Warranty Program, which is the act that created Terrian. And there is a date in these agreements where, I can't remember what the time frame is, I think it's like 2 years beyond the last outside date. There is a date where the client can actually get out of the deal and get their money back. And this is the first time I've actually had clients call in the last 10 years asking me, what's that date, because I want to rescind my agreement and get my money back. Could be for a variety of reasons. Could be that they're not viewing the condo marketplace as they were 5 years ago when they made that purchase. But it's interesting to note. So in your practice, I would actually right now be going back, and if you've sold pre-construction and they haven't closed yet, take a look at those dates, because you might actually be doing your client a really good service in looking at that date and giving your client the option, or at least advising your client, hey, if they go past June 30th, there's a 1-month window of time where you could actually rescind your agreement if you want to. I'm not saying they will or they won't, but you're doing your client a good service, and you're showing your client that you're on top of their business by taking another look at those agreements and just giving them a heads up. It's a very, very valuable thing. It'll make you look great by doing that. Another interesting situation I had was I had a client, an irate client, screaming at my receptionist. This was Monday of last week, saying, I used your firm 5 years ago to buy my house in, I think it was in Pickering or Oshawa or something like that. And I just got a notice from CRA acknowledging that the HST rebate has been paid to the builder on my behalf. And I can't believe that nobody told me about this, and I contacted the builder, and the builder said it was in the agreement, the lawyer should have explained it to you. And basically what he's talking about is the fact that when you buy new construction, HST is already built into the price, and the HST rebate is accounted for and is given back to the builder. So here I've got a guy screaming at my receptionist, and she doesn't know what's going on. So anyway, she said, you better call this guy urgently, because he said, I want a call back from one of the lawyers within 1 hour. It's like, well, that's threatening. So I actually did call him back within the hour, because I don't want to make anything worse. And I'm explaining to the guy, and I'm saying, like, how did all this come about? I don't understand. We closed this 5 years ago. Why are you calling me now? Why he's calling me now is he just got the notice from CRA saying, thank you very much. The HST was paid on your behalf. And I'm wondering, why is this 5 years later? And so I said to him, like, why is it coming out now? He says, I don't know. I spoke to the builder, and the builder said that they only just submitted all the documentation to CRA. And then what I learned from that is that the builder, this was a huge subdivision, and the subdivision was built out over 5 years of time, and they just finished the whole subdivision. So the builder just submitted all the paperwork for the entire subdivision to CRA. Even though this guy closed 5 years ago, the builder's only now asking for the rebate from CRA for the entire subdivision in one shot. For whatever reason, that's how the builder wanted to do it. So on your CRA statement, you actually get a letter from CRA acknowledging that, this guy's $5,700 was paid on your behalf, which was the new home rebate for new construction. And the guy just freaked out about it. And then I had to remind him that 5 years ago when he sat in my office, he signed an application to get the rebate. He signed an assignment agreement which assigned the rebate back to the builder. It was on his statement of adjustments that he got credited for that rebate, and it was assigned back to the builder. Like, there's many, many ways that the clients know about this, but in 5 years' time, they forget, and then then they freak out. And so, in about 10 minutes of time, I was able to calm him down and make him realize that he got the house that he paid for. He didn't pay a penny more. The rebate was already built into the agreement. End of story. That was a good situation. The bad situation is where the client doesn't move in, or doesn't have the perception of moving in. I have a case right now going on where a client of ours bought a condo pre-construction, let's say 5 years ago. 3 years ago, when it was ready, he occupied it with his wife, and then closed and lived in it pre-closing and post-closing for 3 months, because in the interim he had a baby, and then his wife got pregnant with a second baby right after. So what did he do? Sold the condo, moved to a house. CRA didn't like the fact that he sold the condo 3 months after closing, and sent him a letter saying, we want more information on this, and a bunch of questions to answer. He ignored the letter. They sent him another letter, ignored that too. Continually ignored a bunch of letters. CRA brought an applicant, basically declared that not only did he do this, that he falsely got that HST rebate, that's $24,000, plus he resold a brand new condo, so they charged him HST on the entire value of the new condo that when he resold it. So basically, he sold the condo for $400,000. HST say he owes them about $100,000 with of HST tax and penalties. $100,000. The problem came to light when they garnished his wages. So this guy has a good job. He's earning $80,000 a year at a big company. All of a sudden, they garnished his wages, and his mortgage has gone into default because he doesn't have enough money in the bank. So again, he didn't pay attention to it. For 2 months, his mortgage wasn't paid. Now we've got a notice of sale coming from the bank. And he's got tons of equity in his house. A couple $100,000 of equity for sure. But can he refinance? No. Why can he not refinance? Because CRA has registered 3 liens against this property. This guy is in huge, huge amount of trouble. Here's a guy who's got a couple $100,000 of equity, and CRA going after him for a ridiculous reason, and he's this close to getting completely wiped out, bankrupting himself and his wife and 2 kids. His entire family is going to go up in flames. Fortunately, and CRA got a judgment against him. That's how they were able to register the liens. Fortunately, he did call us when his mortgage went into default, and we went through the whole scenario. We were able to make a decision on the HST. He was 10 days away from that ruling, from CRA's ruling, from becoming firm and binding. So he only had 10 days left to file this appeal. Fortunately, he got it in. If he didn't, this guy would be bankrupt. And it's just amazing that CRA took that attitude. The reality is the guy did move in. He knows his neighbors. Had he just answered the questions that CRA sent to him, he probably could have satisfied them why he had to sell 3 months after he closed. The babies, and the fact that he moved in, he can send them copies of his hydro bill that shows different consumption in it. There's tons of different ways you can satisfy CRA. The worst thing you can possibly do is do nothing. And the reason I'm telling you all this is because CRA is out to get you and your clients. They're very, very militant, more so now than they ever have been. They've hired more and more staff to go after people who are flipping houses and condos and buying speculatively and then selling right after closing. And you need to know that these stories exist so that you can better arm yourselves on how to deal with it with your own practice. Because guess what? CRA is also going after realtors on their purchases and sales, but also advising your clients on what they should and shouldn't do. The builder context is amazing too. Back when I was building 10, 15 years ago, we never even thought about, every house I was building, I was moving into and making my principal residence, and I was worried about Terrian coming after me. Terrian is the least of my problem. Terrian, they come after you, you might have a $5,000, $10,000 fine. CRA comes after you, you can have a huge lien on your property and on everything you own, and your wages garnished in a heartbeat. just because they feel, oh, well, you're in the business of this, so we're gonna lean first, garnish first, ask questions later, which is what they do. That's why you hear guys like Neil Gardy on the radio all the time, fighting back. Don't know him personally, but I do love his commercials because, is that who it is?
No.
Oh, okay. No, because we're having that in my neighborhood. Urban Corp is one of the developers, and there's a couple projects that, same situation. Like they've got 50 townhouses, and it's been in occupancy for over a year, and these are townhouses. It's not like it's a high-rise that they're waiting to finish. And for whatever reason, they can't finalize, I think it's the grading or the water retention plan or something like that with the city, and they can't close, and the buyers are going nuts. Especially the people who are assigning. I've got a lot of assigners that have assigned their deals over, and they don't get paid until the deal closes, and they're just waiting to get the deposit money back and the assignment proceeds.
Is there anything the client can do?
No, not unless they go beyond that outside closing date that's in Ontario, and they want to actually just give the house back or the condo back.
So Mitch, there is one question that comes to my mind all the time, that the only builder in town that does sometimes occupancy and registration at the same time is Tridel. I deal with them a lot. So how can other builders come do the same thing?
Tridel's got lots of money. They're able to do a lot of things that other builders don't do. Other builders could do the same thing, but keep in mind, the reason why other builders don't do it is because they want to get the money and continue to build. They want to get people in there as early as they can. Tridel, and maybe the banks of the other builders are forcing them to do that as well. Tridel's not in the same boat as most of the other builders, just because they're very, very wealthy and they can do it their own way. And I like the Tridel way better than forcing people to occupy when buildings aren't ready for occupancy, and when you have to live in dirt and dust. So I think Tridel's an excellent builder. Yep.
How CRA deals with assignments?
Do we have the assignment part yet? We're going to be doing assignment. Oh, it's in here. Okay. How does CRA deal with assignments? First of all, for many, many years, CRA wouldn't even know about an assignment. So they wouldn't deal with it in any way because they don't know it exists. But CRA's gotten smarter, and they know that a lot of properties are being dealt with through assignments. The registry, your MLS system, if anything is posted on MLS or it's posted on Kijiji, like there's lots of ways that you can just put an address into a Google search and things would pop out on that address. So CRA can find out about assignments and do find out about assignments the way things are registered now, because you do have to disclose if you're the buyer through an assignment, so you're the assignee, and you're registering your deal. Basically, the deed that comes from the other lawyer for the builder will say $400,000, for example, is the purchase price. But on your land transfer tax affidavit from the end buyer, it will say $450,000. CRA will know that the difference between the 400 and the 450 is because it was assigned. So, because your buyer is paying a price for the original builder plus the assignment price. That becomes public record. So CRA can look at those and then go back to the builder or go back to the assignee and say, who was the person that assigned it to you? We can see that there was an assignment. They can ask questions at that point. The builders don't have an obligation to open up their books and records to CRA, but they might. I mean, there's nothing to stop them from doing that, and CRA will find out. So I'd be cautious. Yep.
On the same note, many builders now, they have elected not to having the CRA come to their offices because they don't want to be audited to protect themselves. So what they do, they voluntarily, when we do an assignment, they actually report you to CRA, the joint election form, that the name has changed. So the CRA, how he audited, he doesn't audit anymore HST. He's now auditing you on a business premises. Say it's a business, you're flipping the houses, and the taxes are 16% on a monthly basis, and it's actually crazy. The number that You make it $50,000, suddenly they want $30,000 of that $50,000. If you don't disclose, and if they find also an agent who is also assisting the client through this whole process, saying not to worry and everything, we had a couple of agents in our offices because on the same premises, they got audited. They said, okay, now we want to know your book.
I'll give you another hint on how they can find out. The lawyers out there that are acting for the builders, Harris Schaefer being the biggest one, because they do probably 40% of all their new condo developments in the city. If there's an assignment, they will not allow the assignee to claim the HST rebate. So in other words, the assignee will have to pay that $24,000 on closing, and then the assignee will have to go back to CRA and apply, get that money back. And the assignee will be able to get that money back if they show to CRA that they actually moved into the property and made it a principal residence. That's totally fine. It's just that they have to have that money on closing, and then 3 months later they'll get it back from CRA. Why is it being done this way? Because the only way CRA is going to give you the money back is they're going to say, send us a copy of the original agreement with the builder, and send us a copy of the assignment agreement. So the person that's the assignee is going to send those into CRA. CRA is going to go, aha, now we know who the assignor was and how much money they made. Then they go after the assignor. Okay, easy.
There is a letter also going out from the CRA to your clients, so be aware of it, educate them. The letter goes out, it simply says, good morning, Mr. Tabrizi, whatever, so on. Would you please list the properties that you own since 2005 to now? That's a letter already indicating they know exactly what you own, what you sold. But they want you voluntarily disclose to them, okay, I had this, I had this, I had this, now I don't have this. If you don't disclose voluntarily, then you will be subject to audit.
And it's public record. They can find that out anyway. So why not answer them truthfully?
Properly.
Yeah.
Either way, you're screwed.
Okay, so 7 and 8 we're going to skip. 7 is on income properties and tenants. The highlight of 7 on income properties is the bottom line. Best practices on removing tenants, give them cash. Everything I've ever seen in 26 years, if you want to get a tenant out of a property, offer them cash. Don't give it to them until they actually hand the key to you, and then give them the cash. Otherwise, you got to go through all the procedures of the landlord and tenant tribunal, which is difficult to do. So don't bother with landlord and tenant tribunal. Offer cash and offer enough cash that will get the tenants out. Realty taxes and water, we're going to skip that one also, which is number 8. The only point that you should understand is that we as lawyers don't check realty tax. We don't ask for tax certificates or water certificates and things like that any longer because title insurance insures over them. So let your clients know that we don't search everything under the sun when lawyers are closing deals. We only search the things that we have to, and we're not going to search a whole bunch of more things just to waste your client's money. If something's insured by title insurance, we'll rely on the title insurance, and that's how it works. So if the sellers on the other side lied and said they paid their taxes and they didn't pay that last installment, don't worry about it. We'll send a letter to the other lawyer. If it's not paid immediately, we send it to title insurance. Title insurance will immediately pay the purchaser's tax bill, and then title insurance will sue the previous owner. Your clients don't have anything to worry about with that. Okay, estate conveyancing. Estate conveyancing, I like to think of very similar to dealing with family law issues. It's a great area where you can make money or create a niche for yourself in your practice. Recognize, like, people are going to die and houses are going to need to be sold with or through estates quite often. So recognize that how things are set up at the beginning will dictate how the sale is going to go. So if I get calls about somebody calls me up and says there's a mother and daughter on title to the property. The mother has passed away, and they're on title to this property. Can I list the property? My first question is, how are they on title to the property? If they're on title as joint tenants, then immediately, as soon as the person dies, their interest reverts to the remaining joint tenants. You don't have to do anything. We as lawyers will just register a notice in the land registry office that this person died, and that's how it's being transmitted. It's called a transmittal application, but it's not really an application. We just register something on title, and the deal goes through. If the mother and the daughter were holding title as tenants in common, then the mother's interest would go to her estate. And then you need a court order to sell it. And by court order, you don't need a court order necessarily to sell it, but you need a court order appointing somebody to have the authority to sell it. So what that is known as is an appointment of an estate trustee. And there can be an appointment of an estate trustee with a will or without a will. Either way, you still need that appointment. And to get an appointment, you have to submit documents. If there's a will, you submit the will. If there's no will, you submit an affidavit saying there's no will and these are the next of kin. You have to submit a package of information to a judge. Goes into the estate's office of the Court of Ontario, and a judge, and it sits in a pile, and the pile is like this big, and it'll take months before your application gets seen. However, that doesn't mean you can't list and sell a property, because the courts and the judges recognize that the paramount thing in real estate is time is of the essence. Deals have to close when they have to close. And you will all learn that in day one of real estate school. So, if you list the property and you sell it, and you have it signed by whoever is going to be the estate trustee, or the next of kin, or whatever, that's fine. When it comes a week before closing, what the lawyers will do, whoever's handling the estate, my office will actually send a lawyer to the court's office, the estate office, and stand there and say, listen, we have a deal closing in 1 week. We need to see a judge today. And you can actually see a judge, a Supreme Court judge, on an emergency basis based on a real estate transaction happening. So we'll go in, see that judge, and we'll say, this is all the paperwork we filed. It brings your file from the bottom of the pile to the top of the pile. And you actually sit with a judge in chambers, the judge goes through it, signs off on it, appoints the estate trustee, and now you have somebody who can legally sign the deed. And then the closing happens. So in your practice, a lot of people like to put in a clause that says that the closing can be extended for a month of time or 2 months of time until the estate trustee, until it goes through the court process. But in this market, when it's a hot market and people are not putting that clause in, because the person that's offering you the most amount of money for that property may say, I need to be in that property September 1st because my kids want to go to school in that school district, and we'll pay $80,000 over asking as long as we have that firm closing date. Otherwise, we don't want to pay. We don't want to buy the house if it could be extended for a month, 2 months, 3 months. So be cautious on how you're dealing with it, and you'll really only have a feeling for it when you get that offer. So if you get an offer and it's got a clause in it that's got a firm date, and you want to put in a date, you want to be able to extend that date should you not have the appointment of the estate trustee, and you get pushed back by the other agent, and the other agent saying, no, these people have to have it. There's nothing wrong with going firm, as long as you send the deal to a lawyer that does estate stuff, like us, and you have an idea of who the beneficiaries are. If you hear in your discussions with your client that there were 3 kids, this is the last, the mom has died, the dad died years before, the mom died with no will, there's 3 kids, and 2 kids are involved in the sale of the house, and the 3rd kid is trekking in Machu Picchu or something like that. That's not a good situation, because now you've got 2 kids that are beneficiaries and 1 kid that's out of the picture. You'll get a feeling for what a good situation is and a bad situation just from your discussions with your clients. And what you can do is refer that information back to us or whoever the lawyer is, whoever the estate lawyer is that is dealing with your problem, because they'll be able to guide you whether or not you're going to be able to accomplish your goal. If the kid's trekking in Machu Picchu and has access to email and they tell you that, we can send a consent to him and he can sign a consent and send it back, appointing the brother as the estate trustee, then there's no problem. But if you find out that the kid's trekking in Machu Picchu and they actually haven't spoken to the kid in 5 years, and these are siblings, that's a bad situation, because then, when you're before the judge is going to say, who's going to look out for the kid that's trekking in their interest in this property? So, but it's not insurmountable. The more information you can gather and communicate to the lawyers, the better chance you're going to have in closing that deal. Any questions on states?
Yep. The other party,
That's a consent on selling or that's about the how to arrange the selling sites?
The, are you talking about the sibling that's trekking? So the sibling that's trekking doesn't necessarily have to consent to the sale. They have to consent to who's going to be the trustee to sign off on the sale. Because estate trustees have an obligation, their obligation is to maximize the number of dollars out of the estate. The tricky part comes if the kid that's trekking has lived his whole life in that house and wants to continue living there. Then you've got another problem, and that's another red flag, and that's one that you probably wouldn't go firm on a closing date because you need time to sort it out. Powers of attorney and in trust. A power of attorney just could be a one-page document that's signed by a person granting the power to do anything to another person, and it just has to be witnessed by two regular people. There's no magic to a power of attorney. It doesn't have to be witnessed by a lawyer. Anybody can witness a power of attorney. They don't have to be Canadian citizens. It could be a person in wherever witnessing it, and it could be completely valid and legal. However, it may not be accepted by the next person down the line. So just because a power of attorney is valid and a power of attorney may be legal, it's only as good as the next person that's willing to accept it. So if you have a power of attorney, let's say I've got a client in China that wants to buy a property or wants to sell a property by power of attorney, and they send me a power of attorney from China, and it's got Chinese letters for the signature line, so I can't read who signed it, and the witnesses also have Chinese letters on it. It may be totally valid because it might have been signed by that person with the two witnesses in the room at the same time, and it's in English, and it says it grants the authority to my attorney to sell my property. Could all be totally fine. However, if a title insurance company is not going to give title insurance based on the way that power of attorney was signed, and the bank is not going to give financing based on that power of attorney because nobody's verified it, nobody knows who signed it, when it was signed, then even though you might have a valid power of attorney in your hand, it's useless because you can't sell or mortgage a property with it. So that's the reality of the world we're living in right now, because there's tons of fraud out there. Fraud permeates our industry. There's lots of real estate fraud going on. And banks, title insurers, lawyers, we're all cautious about use of power of attorneys. So if you want to use a power of attorney, there are ways that, it doesn't make it more legal, but it makes it more useful if it was signed by a lawyer, one of the people that signed it. A Canadian lawyer is even better, because then the Canadian lawyers, we always verify our client's ID when they come in and see us. A banker, a person that's in a position of trust in a client relationship, those things all help, because then what happens is we have to, when we transmit a deed or do a mortgage or anything by power of attorney, we have to disclose that, and as part of the land registry system, we're ticking off a box saying that this is being done by power of attorney. When we do that, it raises a red flag to lenders, to title insurers, and title insurers are the first ones that will question us about it. So if we're selling something or buying something or financing something through power of attorney, and we tick off that box, title insurers will send us an email saying, please answer all these questions. Do you know this client? How long have you known the client? Have you done other deals with the client? Was the power of attorney signed in your office? If not, was it signed in a lawyer's office? Like, they go through a whole questionnaire of how that power of attorney came to be. And at the end of the day, they will look at the answers and then decide if they want to underwrite or not. If they don't underwrite, if the title insurer says, we're not going to give insurance because we're worried about the authenticity of this power of attorney or our ability to verify the power of attorney, title insurers supply title insurance to not just purchasers and mortgagors, but also to the bank. So if the title insurer is not providing a title insurance policy to the bank's not advancing the money. So you can scream and yell that this power of attorney is valid until you're blue in the face. If the title insurer won't accept it, could be valid, but you're out of luck. You're not going to get the mortgage money. The deal's not going to close. So be very cautious when you're using them. I'm not saying that they're not valid, but be go through the extra steps. If you're, again, like when I talked about earlier on, about bringing a client into the lawyer's office, just because you have a precedent of a power of attorney and you can just sign your client up yourself, don't do it that way. Bring a client into a lawyer's office, have the power of attorney signed in a lawyer's office. That eliminates 10 of the questions out of the 30 questions that we're going to have to deal with, and gives you a way, way better chance of your deal happening and not being shut down by a title insurer or lender. Any questions? President's choice and B lenders. This topic has also been evolving because I'm finding that there's so many different choices now in the marketplace about lending. There's like A lenders, B lenders, C lenders, D lenders, and the B lender, like for example, Home Trust. Home Trust has always been a B lender, and a few years ago they created an A side. So now they've got a B lender with an A side, and you can still have a conventional deal put through Home Trust and get rates that are competitive with other banks, but it's done through another arm of the bank. But it's tricky because when we're dealing with, I'm a Home Trust lawyer. They've got, Home Trust only allows certain lawyers to close their deals. And I can tell you that getting money out of Home Trust is difficult when it comes time to closing time. Same thing with Equitable Trust and a lot of the credit unions. We actually have to send people to their offices and wait there for the check to be issued, sometimes 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because that's how it has to be done. So there's different, when you're dealing with other lenders, which I would, anybody other than the 5 big banks, recognize that sometimes there are problems. And the reason why you went to a bank other than the 5 big ones might be mortgage broker driven, or might be driven by banks' other appetites for certain types of business. That's fine. But you have to, when you're dealing with your mortgage brokers and your clients, you have to discuss things like that. I had another great example with ING. I mean, you're dealing with virtual banks, like an ING, which is now Tangerine. Tangerine is now a subsidiary of Bank of Nova Scotia. But if you have your money in Tangerine and you want to get a certified check from them, it might take you 3 days to be able to get your money. So if your clients need money if you got 24 hours to give a deposit, and all their money is in Tangerine because Tangerine's paying higher interest rates, your clients might not be able to get a draft, because they can't walk into a branch and get a draft in that 24-hour time frame. Same thing with PC Financial. Even though it's part of CIBC, it might be difficult to get a draft out of them. So recognize that when you're having a discussion with your clients, ask them about their banking, take notes about it, and recognize that different banks have different abilities to get money to their clients, different time frames, and different hurdles that they have to go through in terms of when it comes time to get a mortgage. Okay? I don't expect you to be experts in mortgages, but that's why you have mortgage brokers and representatives from banks. When you hear that your client is with a bank other than one of the big ones, you can ask some more questions, because you may know that there might be more hurdles to the deal than meet the eye. Especially if you're trying to buy and sell on the same day. Things get delayed when you're dealing with some of the smaller banks, trust companies, and maybe that's not the ideal situation for your client if they're trying to buy and sell on the same day, or you use the money from one deal in Toronto to buy in Whitby. You may want to be with a Schedule A bank like TD or Scotia, and not with one of the other smaller banks or financial institutions. Another problem I'm also finding with a lot of clients is that the banks are wanting to see money in the accounts for longer than 30 days. I'm finding, if they asked me, if I was buying a house right now and they wanted to see money in my account for longer than 30 days, I wouldn't be able to, because I have investments in a lot of different things. Even in, any time I want to get my money, banks don't like that. They want to see actual cash in an account for a down payment. And so I might have a problem getting a mortgage because I can't show that I have that huge chunk of cash in a bank account. And your clients might be in the same situation. So if they're contemplating, speak to the mortgage professional, find out if they have to have X number of dollars in their account to qualify for their mortgage, find out if it's longer than 30 days, and if they have to, then they might have to cash in on some of their things and put it into into a bank account. Or if the money's coming from parents or who else, whatever relatives are loaning them money or giving them money, make sure it's in the account very early on. The other thing is you may keep in mind that the fact that you have the money in the account, if you have a condition on financing and your closing's not for 2 months down the road, so you know you're gonna have money in the account 30 days prior to closing, but the only way you can get your mortgage condition waived is if you get a commitment from the bank at that moment in time when you're putting the offer in. So they might have to have the money in the bank account at the time of the offer to be able to get the mortgage commitment because the bank's going to ask that question. So just have good communication with the mortgage broker to make sure that your timing is right and you have the money where it's supposed to be long enough ahead of the deal. Closing time, last topic. The buying and selling on the same day happens all the time. We have no problem as lawyers doing it, provided we line up all our ducks in a row, which normally is what happens. The problems happen when you're trying to close a purchase and a sale or any transaction on the last day of the month of May, the last day of the month of June. For whatever reason, I come and do seminars for agents, like I speak to hundreds and hundreds of agents, I tell them all the time, nobody ever listens to me. Choose the 23rd of the month, choose the 11th of the month, choose random dates for your closings. Not everybody is moving out of an apartment into a house. You know, people can be a little bit more flexible. If you always choose the 15th and the 30th or the 15th and the last day of the month for every single closing you do, it's an accident waiting to happen. What happens is the banks get bogged down, we can't get our mortgage money until late in the day. Then when we get our mortgage money, we go to the bank to certify our checks. The lineup is 50 people long to get checks certified at the bank. Then we get back to the office and we call a courier to courier the money to the lawyer on the other side of town. We can't get a courier because it's the last day of the month. There's all these things happen at the end of the month. Choose a different time. And if you're buying and selling on the same day, first of all, try not to. It's always nicer to buy and then sell a day or two later. You know, you're doing your client a good service by telling them, giving them the options, giving them the opportunity to bridge for 2 or 3 days. Bridge loans are dirt cheap. Like the banks, they charge almost nothing relative to what you're getting. And you're getting peace of mind and sanity for your client in being able to close on one property and then close a couple days after on the other property and just be able to move in an orderly fashion. Trying to get movers at the end of the month, same problem. And it's just, I don't know why. I just keep saying it, but people don't listen. Just try, use other dates, and do a good job for your clients. Last topic. Getting the most out of the person that gets paid the least. The person that gets paid the least is us, the lawyers. Second least is actually mortgage brokers, and most is you guys. And whether you're getting paid the most or the least, we all have a job to do. And that job is to do the best thing we can for our clients and work as a team to make sure everything closes and closes without issues and problems. So, you want to surround yourself by people that have the same mindset as you. Just because let's use a lawyer for example, just because a lawyer down the street on Steeles might be the cheapest lawyer in town, that's not going to be necessarily what's the best thing for your client. It's the same thing if I told you, you know, you should all be doing your listings at 0.5%. There's, I can't remember who, somebody posted actually recently, brokerage or an agent that was the head of Billboard, you know, we only charge 0.5%. That's ridiculous. Because what kind of service are they going to get? They're going to get exactly what they're paying for, which is nothing. So surround yourself, be professionals in your business, surround yourself by people that are also professionals in terms and have the same mindset as you. And that mindset should be doing whatever it takes to make your client happy and do a good job for your client. Because that's when you generate and develop clients for life. There's been discount brokerages out there for a long time. There's discount lawyers, there's discount mortgage brokers that give kickbacks to clients. I mean, that's not enhancing our whole industry. Our industry will be enhanced by just doing the best job you can and making sure that everybody's looked after and they have a good, seamless transition through whoever they're working with on their deal. Keep in mind, it's the biggest deal that they ever do in their lifetime is buying and selling a house, and you owe it to it, so do I, to make sure that they're treated well and the job is done well. It's done very well for them. From a lawyer's perspective, we unfortunately, because there is a lot of competition in our pricing, we have to close thousands of deals to earn a living. And that's unfortunate because that's, you know, we don't necessarily give clients the same amount of time that you guys do, nor do we have to. I mean, a purchase and sale transaction is a relatively easy thing to do. It doesn't take rocket science to close a transaction. And, you know, we do thousands of them without any problems. The reason why you go to someone that has experience like we do versus, you know, someone that's fresh out of law school who's willing to close a deal for $300 is the deal that goes wrong. It's when there's a problem with the deal, you want to have experienced people working on your side to make sure that problem goes away. In my office, we don't throw people under the bus. We don't throw agents under the bus. We see lots of mistakes done by agents, mortgage brokers, even lawyers. And we never focus on who made the mistake. We just focus on how are we going to fix it and how are we going to make sure that the deal closes and everybody's happy. That should always be the first and foremost thing in mind. And that's what we do. So I'm going to leave it at that. If there's questions, I'm happy to take more questions on any topic if you want. We have how much time do we have? Question?
About the matrimonial house,
Which? Sorry?
matrimonial house.
Matrimonial house. But just so you know, I'm going to stick around. So if you want to go or you want to ask me a question on your own, I'm here. Sorry.
Yeah, in case the property goes as a gift for one party, and then they split it off after the property.
Great question. Brings me back to my youth. I got married when I was 23 years old, and I actually married a girl whose family was pretty wealthy. They actually lived on the bridle path, believe it or not. I thought, wow, this is great. My in-laws live on the bridle path. So I'm getting to your answer, but I love telling the story. So lo and behold, I'm fresh out of law school, and we're buying our first house. We're buying our first house in 1988. Most of you won't remember 1988, but it was a peak of the market. So we paid $350 for our house at Bathurst and Lawrence, and by the time we split up, which was in 1991, our house was worth $250. So $100,000 of the equity was gone, and the equity in our house, $100,000 of it, lo and behold, came from my parents and my ex-wife's parents. They both gave us money. And now we split up, and we're in the middle of a divorce. And we had like a 3-year marriage and a 4-year divorce. And we're fighting just over, with no kids, we're just fighting over the house. So we go to court, and we have affidavits filed and everything like that. And my affidavit says that the equity in the house came from a gift from my parents and a gift from her parents. Her affidavit says equity in the house came from a gift from my parents and a loan from her parents. So like all of a sudden, the money that her parents gave us was a loan, it wasn't a gift. And this is years after we got married. And I'm like, oh my God, and I'm talking to my lawyer like, this is ridiculous. It was never a loan. Then they show up to court with promissory note. And, you know, says that this money is a loan and bears interest at whatever, and it's signed by my ex-wife, not signed by me. And it's just completely fabricated. The way things ended up was at the end of the day, the judge that we had actually had my ex-father-in-law come into court and got him on the stand in a court proceeding, and under oath asked him questions about when was this promissory note drawn up. But he didn't really know. It was like, was it drawn up at the time of the marriage? No. Was it sometime after? Yes. Was it more than 2 years after? Yes. So like, he knew, but at the end of the day, the judge completely threw out that promissory note because it was clearly a gift. If the intention, if you're giving money to a kid and you're worried about the kid's marriage lasting, then you should sign a promissory note. You should have evidence at that time that it wasn't a gift. But in my situation, you know, they both said it was a gift, and then as soon as you get divorced, they turn it around and try to stick it to you. So I got out okay. We split it at 50-50, which is what I offered from day one, and but that's
So
another story.
my question is, the
Yeah.
other party who
Yeah.
did not participate in any equity in the house, could get the half of it.
Yep, they get half of it, unless you document something otherwise. That's the way our family law act is written. As soon as it's a matrimonial home, as soon as you move in, you get married, 50-50.
signed agreement.
Yep.
This thing is not to give them money.
Anybody else? Thank you so much for having me out. I really, really appreciate it.
Couple of notes, the education, first of all, thank you to the education committee that arranged this. I guess today happened to be also with the Mike Ferry seminar, which is happening in the city, so we had about more than 50 people registered for today, but I guess some elected to go there. Education committee would love to hear your input, whatever courses that you guys feel that want to be addressed or presented. We would love to go out there and research it and get the proper instructor and get it done for you. That's one note. So please fill up those feedbacks forms. So whatever it is, you know, if you want courses for script, if you want courses for whatever, the thing is going to improve your business. That's what we are here. Another thing, this Wednesday, PCRA is also hosting an event with the IC network at the Sheraton Parkway, which is Sheraton in Richmond Hill, Highway 7 and Leslie. Between 7 to 9, PCRA is giving an outline with regards to the market economic forecast. So what happened in the first quarter of the 2015 and what we think going to happen by the rest of the 2015. We think it's a very important course that you need